Hello again. This is the fifth video, I believe, in my series learning the notes on the DG Melodeon. If you've not seen the previous ones yet, I recommend watching those first, because that will make this one seem a lot more comprehensible. And that was quite a long word for me. So, we've previously covered the notes that we need to play most tunes, most folk tunes at least, that are written in the G major scale. And we've kind of talked a bit about scales and G major before, but we need to think about that a little bit more. You may also recall that we previously spoke about tones and semitones. That's easy to see on the piano keyboard here. The semitone being the pitch difference between the keys that are right next to each other. So that one and that one is a semitone, and that one and that one's a semitone, and that one and that one's a semitone. And then a tone is a jump between this one and then a semitone and then to the next one along. So that's jumping one note, and that's a tone. And then we said previously that a major scale is one which has the tones and semitones in a particular pattern. Particularly for a major one, it's tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That's the one we did before. So, what does all this give us? Well, the actual type of scale, the major scale, for instance, gives a particular sort of sound to the tune you're playing. Major scales are the most common ones, and they are sometimes considered fairly upbeat or happy sounding scales, in contrast, say, to a minor scale, which sounds a bit more sad. And a minor scale has got a different sequence of tones and semitones. So that's why you might choose one scale over another one. There's many types of scales. There's several types of minor scales, and there's other ones which have weird Greek names like Melodeon and Aeolian and things like that. They all have their own unique character to them, their own sound. So we've just been dealing with one type of scale so far, or the major scale, and we've been using that major scale in relation to one key note or one root note. And that root note that we've been talking about is the G, and that's a very familiar thing to us now. And the fact is, our instruments are very much related around the major scale of G, because there's a whole row of notes which is specifically for that. But as you can probably guess from the name, there is also a separate note row, the outside row, which is orientated again around a major scale, but this time the major scale that's got a root D, which is that one. Now, we've already played that note. That was the one we extended down to when we were exploring the G scale. However, if you were to take this D note and treat that as your root, and then apply that tone, semitone thing, then that would give you the notes of D major. So it's the same pattern, it's the same major pattern, but you're starting on a different note, this time D. So if we could tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And that would give you that's the D major scale. And you'll notice a lot of the notes we played there are the same notes that we played when we were playing G major. The difference is that we're starting in a different place, and that seems trivial, but actually it's a very key thing. And it's so key that that's why we have a separate row on our Melodeon just for helping us play in that key. So that's what we're going to deal with this next video, is playing a basic scale like we did in G major, but this time in D major. So there we go. So here we go, we're going to start with D major, and as I just showed you in that introduction, we're going to use notes we already know, at least to start with. Certainly notes we already know on the piano keyboard, and we're going to start on D, and D, as we mentioned before, is the note there between the two black notes that are on their own. So that's going to be a D, and that was actually the last note we learned in the previous video. So we already know that the D on our Melodeon is in two places. We can play it on the second button on the inside row or the third button on the outside row, and it's the same thing. Because we're going to be playing a D major scale, and because this instrument has got a row completely dedicated to playing in D major, we might as well for this section play our D note on the outside, because that's on the D row, and that will be our root note for this scale. So you already know that, we learnt that before, but yep, that's where we're starting from now. So that was an easy one, wasn't it? You already knew it. Okay, so we just did our D note. The next one kind of obviously is going to be, well, E natural. And just as it was before, we already know this. We learnt that in the previous video, because we learnt it when we were going down the G scale, and the E natural note on the piano keyboard is that one next to our D there. And well, yeah, we don't need to worry about that too much anymore, because we know already, because we played it before. If we play the D on the push on the outside row, the E was the pull on that same button. So there we go. That was another easy one that you didn't really have to learn. So for D major scale, we know D, we know E. The next note is, actually you should be able to know this as well, the next note in our scale is going to be F sharp. We can see that on the keyboard. We can start out here, and from there it's going to be another tone, so we're missing out this one, the F, which we don't ever really use in the main scales on our instrument, and go straight onto that one, the F sharp. And if you're awake and you're remembering what we did before, you should know that we already have an F sharp, because we learnt it when we went down from the G note there, and we pulled that on the second button on the inside row. So you could go and play it like that. That's the right note, but we're not going to do that, because if you're playing in D major, although that's the right note, it's not usually the one that we're going to use, because, well, it's not going to fit in with other things that we're going to do later. So it turns out, just as there was with the D natural, there's actually two places we can play the F sharp. I didn't tell you that before, I kept that a secret, but I'm telling you now. So instead of playing the F sharp on the inside and pulling it, no, that's the one. You didn't hear that mistake. Not got a red nose on for nothing. I can make mistakes. So here we are. That's the F sharp, and instead of pulling it there, we're going to push it and play it on the which one? On the fourth button on the outside row. So you can play it pulling it on the second of the inside, or the fourth one pushing it on the outside, and that's still an F sharp. And so yeah, that's one that we are going to play when we're going to just do our straightforward D major playing. So, and as a bonus one, you can probably guess the note which is coming next, and that's G natural. Show you on there. There we go. And G natural, well, that's super familiar, isn't it? Because that's the first note that we learned when we started doing all of this. That was the very first one, you know that. And you already know that G natural is available to us if we're pushing on the inside row on this instrument on the third button. So we could go, and then we could push it, and we got it. Except, again, we're not going to do it because, well, it turns out that the G natural note is also on the outer row, and this time it's in the opposite direction to how we did it, just as the F sharp was. So now instead of pushing it on the inside, we're going to pull it on the outside, and that is going to happen again on that fourth button. So we can push F sharp on that one, and we can pull it. And both of those notes are ones that we previously were able to play on the inside, but in the other way. So we push the G and we pull the F sharp there, or we pull the G here and push the F sharp. It's confusing, I know, but that's how Melodeons are. You get the same notes on different buttons, and sometimes they're on different buttons but go in the same direction, but in the case of those two, they go in different directions. It's something that's very useful once you actually start to understand it and really get to know your instrument. Again, it's another reason for doing these videos, because there's certainly players I know that have been playing for years and still don't understand that. So it's worth persevering and just taking it a step at a time and really getting your head around it and understanding what's going on, and relate it if you need to back to the piano keyboard, because this is a lot simpler to understand than the Melodeon is. So if you understand it there first, then you can relate it to this. Ready for some more? Okay, so for our D major scale, D, E, F, G. We'll do the next two now together, and we're going to do, if that was G, the next one is going to be A, and the one following that is going to be B. And those are both notes that, well, you should already know them, because those are notes that we've already played previously on the inside row. So the A on the inside row, we pulled it on the third button, and then the B we played by pushing it on the fourth button. But you may have guessed this already, for playing in D major we're going to do this differently. You could play those notes on those buttons, but we're not going to. Instead, we're going to play the A on the outside row, and this is another one of these odd cases where the same note is on two buttons, and in this case, like the F sharp and the G, this one is in the opposite direction to it was on the inside. So the A is going to be on the fifth button on the outside row there. So yeah, it should sound the same as, that's the A we played originally, and that's now the one on the outside row. A, 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 A. Confusing, huh? And on here it's much simpler, because you only got one A note, just as we've only got one G note and one F sharp. You just choose it. Here we've got it on both. And exactly the same thing even works for B. We played the B on the inside by pushing it on the fourth button, but it turns out that you can get a B as well by pulling it on the fifth button of the outside one, and that's the same one as we've just used for A. So we've got A and B on that fifth button, just as we've got A and B on the inside but on different buttons. So getting there. Let's do the whole D scale as we know it so far. So go D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. And if you notice, when I did that, it was push pull, push pull, push pull. just like it was when we started on the G note and played in G major, and that was push pull. So it's what we're doing is actually just mirroring what we did on this row, starting from G, and actually doing the same thing starting from D here. There we go, and now you know what all those notes are. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. Only 2 more to go and we're done for this video. Stay tuned. Okay, final leg for this video. Final 2 notes for D major scale. We'll go back here for now and just see what we've done. We played D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and a lot of those notes were the same notes we were playing when we were playing in G major. In fact, when we extended the G major scale, we used all of those same ones that we've just done for D major. What's different? Well, it's the starting note that's different, except the next bit, because something different happens here. Because we finished on the B before, and when we were in G major, we used this note. This was a C natural. But if we were to start from the beginning and use our pattern of semitones and tones, the major scale pattern, we would see that something odd happens, because we start there and we start with D, then we do a tone, another tone, and then the semitone, and then another tone, and then another tone. And oh, what happens here? Because another tone from here, there's not a black note there, so we need to skip that one and go to this one. We've not used that note before. This is really the main difference between the G row and the D row, is that the D row has got this note, and the C and the C is that we played before is on the G row. So C, what's this one? We mentioned this previously. That's called a C sharp. So like we had to play an F sharp, now we're playing a C sharp when we're playing in D. So it's going to sound like. That's the one we want to play. So where's that? Well, you might be able to figure this out if you've not done it already by copying the pattern that we used for the G major scale, and which went push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, and then another pull. It turns out that that's the way it works again on the D row. Push, pull, push, pull, push, pull, and that's the B note. So the next pull note on the next button along, that's where your C sharp is. That's the one we want. And that one, I think, is the 6th button on this instrument. I'm pulling it for C sharp. Which just leaves us one final note to go. So, ready? Okay, here we are. Let's finish off this D major scale in the lower octave. We're almost there. We started from here, D, E. The last one, it feels like it wants to finish and resolving back to. That's it, a higher D note. That's the one we started from, and that's the one we finished. And we're playing that one on the same button that we just played that C sharp. That 6th button. And you might think, well, don't we already know that note from before? And yep, you do, because up here, even here, this D note is exactly the same as the D note that we played when we were learning the G scale previously. And so the D note there was on the 5th button on the inside row on a push, and now we've got a D on the outside row also on a push. They're the same. And that might seem sort of familiar too, because remember down on this end we had a D note and then another D note. So in that low octave and then the higher one, we have a choice. We have a choice both octaves. So if you're playing in D major, if you've got a tune which is written in D major, then probably you're going to use the one that's on the outside most of the time, but sometimes the fingering might help that you use the inside one. You can use either, it's up to you. So or you can play the top and the bottom Ds together, or something, go back to what we did with the G. If we played the bottom D and then the F sharp together, that sounds nice. If you play the bottom D and the A together, that sounds nice. If you play all of those three together, that sounds really nice. That's a D major chord. So that's your second right hand chord that you've learnt there. Just as you learnt the G major one here, you push those three, you get the D major, and if you wanted to, you could add with your little finger that high D, make it even more expansive and big. What about that? Time to stop and take a deep breath, I think. That's given us the entire low octave D major scale. Hope you followed all that. There's a lot to learn with this. I did say it wouldn't take any kind of short time period. It's a big deal. Take your time, go at your own pace, and you'll get there. See you in the next one.